Welcome to 3x3 Finance. What if I told you that being rich doesn't guarantee staying rich? In fact, some of the wealthiest people on the planet have managed to lose everything, millions, even billions, and end up with nothing. You might think that with hundreds of millions in the bank you'd be set for life, but as you're about to see, that couldn't be further from the truth. Today we're going to dive into 5 jaw-dropping stories of people who had it all, and then lost everything, and stick around until the end, because the last story is so shocking, it might just change the way you think about money forever. Let's get started. The famous actor who made $200 million and filed for bankruptcy. Imagine having $200 million sitting in your bank account. That's the kind of money most people can only dream about. Now imagine losing it all. That's exactly what happened to Nicolas Cage. Yes, the same guy from massive Hollywood hits like National Treasure and Face Off. At one point, he was one of the highest paid actors in Hollywood, pulling in $20 million per movie. But somehow, he managed to burn through his entire fortune. How? Well, let's start with his insane spending habits. He didn't just buy mansions, he bought 15 of them. He owned a fleet of luxury cars, including multiple Rolls-Royces and a Lamborghini that once belonged to the Shah of Iran. But that's not even the craziest part. He also spent millions on a private island, a haunted house, a 70-million-year-old dinosaur skull, and even a pet octopus. At some point, even $200 million wasn't enough to sustain his lifestyle. He fell into massive debt, the IRS came after him for unpaid taxes, and he was forced to sell most of his assets just to stay afloat. But here's the real lesson: no matter how much money you make, if you don't control your spending, you'll always be broke. And speaking of reckless spending, wait until you hear about this next guy. The athlete who spent his entire fortune on cars and jewelry. You've probably heard the phrase, athletes make millions, but end up broke. Well, there's a reason for that. And no one proves it better than Mike Tyson. At the height of his boxing career, Tyson was making $30 million per fight and had a total net worth of around $400 million. But somehow, he lost every single penny. How? Well, let's start with the fact that he once spent $2 million on a bathtub. Yeah, you heard that right. A single bathtub. And that wasn't even the craziest purchase. He bought over 100 luxury cars, many of which he never even drove. He had a collection of tigers that cost him $70,000 each, and their food bills were insane. He threw around cash like it was paper, once spending $140,000 on a single birthday party. But the biggest reason he went broke? Bad financial decisions and trusting the wrong people. His financial advisors mismanaged his money, he made terrible investments, and before he knew it, he was filing for bankruptcy. And here's the lesson: it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. But if you think losing hundreds of millions is bad, just wait until you hear about the next guy who lost everything in one single crypto scam. The crypto investor who got scammed out of his millions. We all know that crypto has made some people rich overnight, but it's also destroyed fortunes just as fast. And no one knows that better than James Howells. Howells was one of the earliest Bitcoin investors. Back in 2010, when Bitcoin was worth just a few cents, he mined 8,000 Bitcoins on his laptop. At today's prices, that would be worth over $300 million. So why isn't he a multi-millionaire? Because he accidentally threw away his hard drive. Yep, his entire fortune is literally sitting in a landfill. And to make things worse, he spent years trying to recover it, even offering the city millions to let him dig up the garbage site. But here's where it gets worse. Even if he didn't lose his hard drive, he might have still lost everything. Because like so many other crypto investors, he trusted the wrong people and fell victim to scams. From fake exchanges to Ponzi schemes, countless people have lost millions overnight. And that brings us to our next story, about a billionaire who managed to lose everything in just one day. The business mogul who lost billions in one day. Ever heard of Sam Bankman-Fried? At one point he was the golden boy of crypto, running one of the largest exchanges, FTX. His company was worth $32 billion, and he was hailed as the next Warren Buffett. But then, it all came crashing down. In just 24 hours, his entire empire collapsed. $16 billion. Gone. Why? Because it turns out his company was a giant house of cards. He was secretly funneling customer funds into risky investments, and when people tried to withdraw their money, the entire thing fell apart. The worst part? Thousands of people lost their life savings. And here's the takeaway: wealth built on lies will always collapse. But if you think losing billions is bad, the last story is even crazier. Because this next guy didn't just lose his money, he lost everything. The lottery winner who ended up living in his car. You probably dream about winning the lottery, but for many winners, it turns out to be the worst thing that ever happened to them. Take Michael Carroll for example. He won $14 million in the UK lottery when he was just 19 years old. But instead of setting himself up for life, he went on an insane spending spree. He bought luxury cars, mansions, and a fleet of private jets. He threw wild parties, spending hundreds of thousands on drugs, alcohol, and gambling. He gave away millions to friends and family until he had nothing left. Within just a few years, he was completely broke. He ended up homeless, living in his car, working minimum wage jobs just to survive. And that's the final lesson. If you don't know how to handle money, having more won't help you. Honorable mentions: more insane stories of riches to rags. If you thought those 5 stories were crazy, wait until you hear about these other millionaires who went completely broke. MC Hammer, the rapper who blew through $70 million. Back in the early 90s, MC Hammer was on top of the world. He had multiple chart-topping hits, an iconic dance move, and a fortune worth $70 million. But instead of investing his money wisely, he spent it faster than he could make it. He built a $30 million mansion that looked more like a palace. He had a personal entourage of 200 people, paying them millions in salaries. And he spent ridiculous amounts on luxury cars, jewelry, and even golden toilets. By the late 90s, his fortune was completely gone. He filed for bankruptcy and had to start from scratch. Lesson learned: no matter how much money you make, if your expenses outgrow your income, you're doomed. Johnny Depp, the Hollywood star who lost $650 million. Most people dream of making millions, but Johnny Depp had $650 million and lost it all. Despite being one of the highest paid actors in Hollywood, he made every financial mistake in the book. He spent $3 million just to shoot Hunter S. Thompson's ashes out of a cannon. He owned 14 mansions, a private island, and a yacht that cost him millions in maintenance. And he reportedly spent $30,000 a month on wine alone. The result? Massive debt, lawsuits, and financial ruin. He eventually had to take on random movie roles just to pay off his debts. The takeaway? If you let lifestyle creep take over, no amount of money will ever be enough. Allen Iverson, the NBA legend who lost $200 million. Allen Iverson was once one of the most iconic NBA players in history. He made over $200 million in salary and endorsements, yet somehow ended up broke. How? He spent millions on jewelry, luxury cars, and partying. He had a massive entourage covering their hotel stays, travel, and shopping sprees. And he never thought the money would stop coming in. At one point, he was so broke that he couldn't even afford a cheeseburger at a hotel. Thankfully, he had one smart move: a trust fund from Reebok that pays him $800,000 a year, so he's no longer struggling. But this story proves even the biggest stars can go broke if they don't manage their money. A.K. Batista, the billionaire who lost $35 billion. Going from a billionaire to broke sounds impossible, right? Well, that's exactly what happened to Ike Batista, a Brazilian businessman who was once worth $35 billion. He was one of the richest men in the world, until one single mistake ruined everything. His company, OGX, was built on overhyped promises. Investors poured billions into his projects, but the moment they realized his oil company wasn't producing any oil, his empire collapsed overnight. In just 1 year, he went from a billionaire to owing billions in debt. He was even arrested for corruption. Moral of the story? If your wealth is built on hype and lies, it will crash and burn. So what can we learn from these crazy stories? It doesn't matter how much money you make. If you spend recklessly, you'll end up broke. Never trust bad financial advisors or shady investments. And most importantly, financial education is more valuable than money itself. If you want to stay rich, you need to be smart. And if you found this video helpful, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button, because trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching.